Whether you are recently single or have been single for a long time, this video aims to illuminate how chemical keys affect long-lasting love. Or in other words, will you always be single? From dopamine's point of view, having things is uninteresting. It's only getting things that matters. If you live under a bridge, dopamine makes you want a tent. And if you live in a tent, dopamine makes you want a house. If you live in the most expensive mansion in the world, dopamine makes you want a castle on the moon. Dopamine has no standard for good and seeks no finish line. The dopamine circuits in the brain can be stimulated only by the possibility of whatever is shiny and new. Never mind how perfect things are at the moment. The dopamine motto is more, is one of the instigators of love, the source of the spark that sets off all that follows. But for love to continue beyond that stage, the nature of the love relationship has to change, because the chemical symphony behind it changes. Dopamine isn't the pleasure molecule after all, it's the anticipation molecule. To enjoy the things we have as opposed to the things that are only possible, our brains must transition from future-oriented dopamine to present-oriented chemicals, a collection of neurotransmitters we call the here and now molecules, or the oxytocin, endorphins, your brain's version of morphine, and a class of chemicals called endocannabinoids, your brain's version of marijuana, essentially. As opposed to the pleasure of anticipation via dopamine, these chemicals give us pleasure from sensation and emotion. In fact, one of the molecules is called anandamide, named after a Sanskrit word that means joy, bliss, and delight. According to anthropologist Helen Fisher, early or passionate love lasts only 12 to 18 months. And after that, for a couple of months to remain attached to one another, they need to develop a different sort of love called companionate love. Companionate love is mediated by the HNNs or serotonin system because it involves experiences that are happening right here, right now. You're with the one you love, so enjoy it. Companionate love is not a uniquely human phenomenon. We see it among animal species that mate for life. Their behavior is characterized by cooperative territory defense and nest building. The bonded pair feed each other, groom each other, and share parental chores. Most of all, they stay close to each other and display expressions of anxiety when separated. It's the same for humans. Humans engage in similar activities and have similar feelings, particularly satisfaction that there is another person whose life is deeply entwined with their own. When the HNN's serotonin system take over in the second stage of love, dopamine is suppressed. It has to be, because dopamine paints a picture in our minds of a rosy future in order to spur us on through the hard work necessary to make it a reality. Dissatisfaction with the present state of affairs is an important ingredient in bringing about change, which is what a new relationship is all about. HNN companionate love, on the other hand, is characterized by deep and enduring satisfaction with the present reality and an aversion to change, at least with regard to one's relationship with one's partner. In fact, though dopamine and HNN circuits can work together, under most circumstances they counter each other. When HNN circuits are activated, we are prompted to experience the real world around us, and dopamine is suppressed. When dopamine circuits are activated, we move into a future of possibilities, and HNNs are suppressed. Laboratory testing supports this idea. When scientists looked at blood cells extracted from people who were in the passionate stage of love, they found lower levels of HNN serotonin receptors compared to healthy people, an indicator that the HNNs were in retreat. It's not easy to say farewell to the dopaminergic thrill of new partners and passionate longing, but the ability to do so is a sign of maturity and a step toward long-lasting happiness. Think of a man who plans a vacation to Rome. He spends weeks scheduling each day, making sure he will be able to visit all the museums and landmarks he's heard so much about. But when he stands among the most beautiful artwork ever created, he thinks about how he's going to get to the restaurant where he has reservations for dinner. He's not ungrateful to see the masterpieces of Michelangelo, it's just that his personality is primarily dopaminergic. As an aside, my personality is primarily dopaminergic. He continues anticipation and planning more than doing. Lovers experience the same disconnect between anticipation and experience. The early part, passionate love, is dopaminergic, exhilarating, idealized, curious. The latter part, companionate love, is H&N focused, satisfying, peaceful, and experienced through bodily senses and emotions. A romance built on dopamine is a thrilling, if short-lived, roller coaster ride, but our brain chemistry gives us the tools to move down the path that leads to companionate love. Just as dopamine is the molecule of obsessive yearning, the chemicals most associated with long-term relationships are oxytocin and vasopressin. Oxytocin is more active in women and vasopressin in men. Scientists have studied these neurotransmitters in the laboratory in a variety of animals. For example, when scientists injected oxytocin into the brains of female prairie voles, the animals formed a long-term bond with whatever male happened to be around. Similarly, when male moles that were genetically programmed to be promiscuous were given a gene that boosted vasopressin, they mated with one female exclusively, even though other receptive females were available. Vasopressin acted somewhat like a good husband hormone. Dopamine does the opposite. Human beings who have genes that produce high levels of dopamine have the highest number of sexual partners and the lowest age of losing their virginity. Most couples have sex less frequently since obsessive dopaminergic love evolves into companionate H&N serotonin-based love. And this makes sense, since oxytocin and vasopressin suppress the release of testosterone. In a similar way, testosterone suppresses the release of oxytocin and vasopressin, which helps explain why men with naturally high quantities of testosterone in their blood are less likely to marry. Similarly, single men have more testosterone than married men, and if a man's marriage becomes unstable, his vasopressin falls and his testosterone goes up. Do human beings require long-term companionship? There's good evidence that the answer is yes. Despite the superficial appeal of having multiple partners, most people eventually settle down. A United Nations survey found that more than 90% of men and women marry by the age of 49. We can live without companionate love for sure, but the majority of us arrange a good portion of our lives around trying to find it and keep it. The H&Ns give us the ability to do that. They allow us to find satisfaction in what our senses deliver, what is right in front of us, and what we can experience without the nagging sense that we need something more. If this video resonates with you, consider subscribing and joining the indubitably curious community. As always, thank you for joining me. I enjoy reading your comments, and if you're already subscribed, I'll see you soon.